What's up? Welcome back to the booth. Riding out alongside Paul Cheon. A great pleasure to have your company as we delve even further into the World Championship for Magic the Gathering. We are live out of Boston, Massachusetts, the Cradle of Liberty, Paul Cheon. And right now we're heading down to the feature match area. We've got two big names. As ever, it goes without saying, Kelvin up against Owen Turtenwald himself, the O-Rat. And we're going to see how things go between these two players. A matchup that we've explored pretty thoroughly throughout the weekend, but we're going to continue to do it here. Kelvin, he's on blue-black control.
Yeah, and, you know, Kelvin, he's been on the Pro Tour for a while, and a lot of people have said, well, you know, Kelvin, probably one of the biggest dogs going into this tournament just because he hasn't had, like, a huge breakout tournament, or he hasn't had too many of them, and he's going up against Owen Turtenwald. But every person that I've talked to on his team they call him the Master.
The Master.
Yes, and MTG Mint Card has a ton of great players, and they're just like, yeah, Kelvin is a total master. Don't count him out. He's always ready to go.
Well, another Stone Cold Master on your screen there, Owen Turtenwald. This guy has had all sorts of success that has landed him all the way into the Hall of Fame here, and he's also a, he's no stranger to success at the highest level of the game. The Player of the Year twice.
I guess Owen Turtenwald's also a master.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So a Battle of the Masters indeed. There they are on your screen. Kelvin on the left and Owen Turtenwald on the right. Looks like we've got a mulligan or two going on your screens right now. But Paul, we've had the chance to check in with how this matchup kind of pans out, and let's just cover off once again for those of us who have just joined the stream, perhaps, about what's going on here. Team Energy versus blue-black control. How, in a typical fashion, does this matchup shake out?
Well, typically in game ones, the blue-black control deck has a big edge because all their spells are relevant, right? You're just kind of playing generic counter spells with removal, and you know, if you're playing against a mid-range deck, you're just always going to have a target. So the blue-black deck doesn't have any dead cards. Meanwhile, the Team Energy, its way to interact with other creature decks is removal spells, cards like Magma Spray, Harness Lightning, Abrade. You have to play some number of that to be able to compete against decks like Ramunap Red. But those cards are quite bad against blue-black control. So I think blue-black, big edge game one. After sideboard, things change.
And this is exactly how things go because, of course, blue-black control does take away the biggest edge that Energy has because Energy contests the battlefield so strongly, so well, and a blue-black control virtually creatureless.
Right, exactly. All the creatures you see very resilient or provide value when it enters the battlefield, and we see a turn to search.
Key play here for Kelvin. Last round we saw it propelled Jerry Thompson to victory in 2-1 against Seth Manfield, and you characterized the matchup, Paul, by saying that the turn 2 search is what makes or breaks it.
Absolutely, very, very important. Kelvin being on the play and also being able to play that search on turn 2, and I believe Kelvin might actually be the only member of his testing squad, the MTG Mint Card with Christian Calcano and Li Shutian, that's actually opted to play blue-black control. The other is choosing to play Ramunap Red. And he's doing a great job. He actually played against Josh Shutter-Layton. It went very close to time, but he actually pulled ahead and won in the control matchup against, you know, one of the best players in the world.
I would say that this deck, you know, perhaps breakout is a little bit too much of the way to say it, but it's definitely made its mark on this tournament. We've had blue decks languishing in obscurity for a long time, but this World Championship's really seen him rise to the front.
Yeah, and Kelvin hand is fantastic here. He's got Fatal Push for the Longtusk Cub, Fatal Push for the Servant of the Conduit, then he can go fetch a land and keep up Essence Scatter or Disallow for Owen Turtenwald's turn 4 play. Meanwhile, he's got that Search for Azcanta going as well. Evolving Wilds filling his graveyard, 4 cards in the yard already, getting pretty close to flipping that as well. So everything is on Kelvin side here. He's basically currently just looking for lands, as he does have 2 counterspells and a Torrential Gearhulk. So
as long as he continues to hit his lands, he's going to be in a good spot. Unfortunately, you see he has made the about the most incorrect decision you can when it comes to of art on Evolving Wilds there. But apart from that, he's in a great spot, of course.
Oh, and he found a land, so he's looking great.
Absolutely hitting his straps here. Disallow, Essence Scatter, and later on Torrential Gearhulk will all do some heavy lifting for the Singaporean player here.
And taking a look at Owen Turtenwald's hand, I mean, you see those removal spells. Harness Lightning, it's an okay card. Abrade, it deals with the Gearhulk, not very good against a card like the Scarab God.
So once again, we do see the weakness that Team Energy has going into game number 1. Of course, things change after sideboards, as I'm sure we'll see. But Turtenwald's just going to jam here. There we go.
Oh, and it's time to flip. It's time to flip.
So, Azcanta will be discovered here. The Sunken Ruin.
And it's actually interesting if you notice, I believe he put a Field of Ruin into his graveyard. in that last scry despite needing the land, because I think he was thinking, well, the sooner I flip this Azcanta, the sooner I actually also get a mana source for my deck.
And that's another really important aspect of the Sunken Ruin here. Once Azcanta does flip, it also will gain its control of a mana every turn.
And now Kelvin Chu with Glimmer of Genius. This is going to help him find his land drops. At this point, he wants to hit a land drop every turn so he can cast spells while also getting digging deeper with Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. So it's going to be really difficult for Owen Turtenwald to kind of navigate around this.
Keeps both cards on top just like that.
The double
no
keep.
worry at all.
The double keep.
That is certainly, but none of them are land. He just drew 3 cards off the top and none of them were lands, but he was so happy with them as we see another Glimmer of Genius come down.
Yeah.
He's pulling further and further ahead here, and Owen Turtenwald's hand is looking pretty embarrassing in the face of Kelvin Chu's Stone Cold control deck here.
Yeah, Owen Turtenwald's hand not doing a whole lot here. He is also just getting a bit flooded here. So, you know, I think almost in any matchup, his hand wouldn't have really panned out. But now there's a Gearhulk, which is threatening to close out the game pretty quickly here.
This is all wrapped up, really. Kelvin Chu has not had too much of a case to answer as we see a Braid come down, but still, that's a straight up 2-for-1 with the fact that Chu was able to
It's a
draw
3-for-1.
Sorry,
he drew 2 cards.
It is a 3-for-1. Stone Cold 3-for-1 here.
Look at that! Look at his hand.
He's got 7 cards in hand.
Is it time to play pick a card again? We can just do it. Look at this.
And we're going to see now the
he's like, I want to
God.
end the game. Let's go.
Let's get it done. Let's get it done here, he says. Kelvin Chu committing the 5-5 to the board. This monstrous beater, Paul, is going to wrap things up very, very quickly indeed.
Right. The thing is, Owen Turtenwald's list, he is playing 1 copy of Confiscation Code, so that is one way to deal with the Scarab God if he so chose. But currently, he has to just use a Harness Lightning to try to buy some time.
Now, are we going to see this play here? With Harness Lightning, the Essence Scatter taking care of the World of Virtuoso. The Scarab God comes back, of course.
Yeah, and one of Owen's main paths to hoping to pull ahead here was have Kelvin Chu forgetting the trigger. But we're at the World Championships.
That's probably not going to happen.
Pretty unlikely.
No,
that was a quick game.
That was indeed. That was. I mean, that's about as quick as you can get him, really, with Kelvin Chu playing Blue-Black Control. Not known for its alacrity, Paul Cheon, but right there we saw a real barnstormer. That's all she wrote for game number 1. We'll be back from the World Magic Championship with more Standard right after this.
Looking for a challenge? Magic Online offers monthly limited and constructed events which lead to the yearly Magic Online Championship. Download Magic Online at mtgo.com and start earning the points you need to enter. Head down to your local store and buy a box of Ixalan to receive a dino-sized booster. Each booster is filled with 4 rares or mythic rares, 4 premium foils, and an alternate art premium foil rare. Limit 1 per customer. Visit Ixalan.com to find a store.
And welcome back to live coverage of the World Championship for Magic the Gathering, live coming at you from Boston, Massachusetts. My name's Riley Knight, and I've got the great pleasure to be joined by Paul Cheon alongside me. And Paul, we're going to jump right back into our main match here between Kelvin Chu and Owen Turtenwald. Of course, Kelvin Chu picking up game number 1. Things aren't going to be so easy for him game number 2.
Yeah. I mean, everything kind of going according to plan in game 1, blue-black control with the turn 2 Search for Skantha, followed by a lot of interaction. Now, after sideboard, Owen Turtenwald has a lot of cards, a lot of options. He's boarding in multiple copies of Torrential Gearhulk, along with Negate and Glimmer of Genius and Chandra Torch of Defiance. He has a ton of cards that he could look to bring in here, so it should be interesting to see how this matchup boils down after sideboard. I do think that after sideboard, the teamer deck does have a small edge, and especially on the play where you can try to resolve a threat, and then at some point, resolve a threat with counter magic backup. That's
the key component of this matchup, the fact that the Abrades turn into Negates, the Magma Sprays turn into things like Supreme Will or Spell Pierce. That's going to really turn things around. So Chu's going to have to dig deep, he's going to have to dig hard, Paul, if he wants to keep his head above the water here.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you notice, Owen Turtenwald, Torrential Gearhulk as well. So a lot of, I imagine, a lot of scenarios where Owen Turtenwald will try to draw a counter by playing an end-of-turn Torrential Gearhulk. Kelvin Chu will have no choice but to counter, then untap, and maybe try to resolve a Planeswalker.
Yeah, something like a Nissa or Chandra. Yeah.
Exactly, and just kind of put pressure on Kelvin Chu's mana.
So this isn't going to be a walk across the English countryside for Kelvin Chu here. It's going to be hard graft. He's going to have to dig very deep because, as you mentioned before, Paul, his deck doesn't necessarily get upgrades.
Right. But, you know, we saw Jerry Thompson employ this strategy in the previous match. I think Duress is a very interesting card, and if you're looking to bring in a bunch of counter magic and a bunch of other instants and planeswalkers, then I think Duress could be a pretty good way to kind of help you in that mana war.
Yeah, Duress can definitely get you. The other card that might get you as well in these mid-range games is, of course, Gonti, the Lord of Luxury. Gonti is a Death Touch creature that also gets your head on cards. That's exactly where you want to be as a control player.
It's a 2-for-1 on this deck, and it does it's another clean answer to a card like Bristling Hydra, where you can just use it to block.
Early on in the games, though, it is, of course, all about Search for Azcanta, the latest piece of technology for blue-based control decks, and they've propelled these decks to the forefront of this tournament so far. But Owen Turtenwald, he's out of the gates like a flash because it was, I should say.
But Kelvin has that answer right away, but he leads off with Swamp. That cannot be a good... Owen's got to be happy, but it cannot be good for Kelvin, given that that's his start.
No. Bit awkward for him, considering there's no Essence Scatter or something coming down, but instead it's Fatal Push number 2.
Yeah, really needs to find a blue source here.
Okay.
It's
going to be a
now he's got a Duress. Because he doesn't have a counterspell, or he doesn't have the mana to cast a counterspell, he opts to go for the Duress here in case Owen Turtenwald had Chandra Torch of Defiance to play on the following turn, because he has no way to interact with that.
And that's what you want to do with your Duress. You snipe the threat before the turn before it comes down, but it wasn't able to deal with this Bristling Hydra, which now is running over the battlefield. Large and in charge, this guy.
I didn't know Kelvin Chu sideboarded into mono black control here.
Here we go. Going to see some great Merchants of Asphodel, as we see now Bontu's Last Reckoning getting rid of the Hydra here.
And that is a singular copy from Kelvin, but it does allow him to come back in situations where your opponent has sometimes snuck in a threat. And it looks like Kelvin Chu missing on blue mana, but Owen not punishing him. Oh, never mind. There's a Glorybringer.
Glorybringer. So both players sort of just doing the stone nothings there for full turn cycle. But Glorybringer's going to change that in a major way. Kelvin Chu under pressure. But there we go. Going to recoup some of that pressure now with Vraska's Contempt. These players playing pretty quick, Paul.
Right, and he's going for the main phase Vraska's Contempt because he does know that Owen Turtenwald has a lot of counter magic in his sideboard. And, you know, Kelvin Chu doing a pretty great job of, you know, holding the fort despite being on 4 swamps on the battlefield.
Despite apparently having sideboarded out all of his islands, Kelvin Chu is just absolutely keeping this game under the
games do go pretty long, so, you know, might as well. Is he going to Duress again? Is he going to hit something?
Again. Yeah.
Wow, he is.
And a Confiscation coup if he wants it. Paul, what's the pick?
There's a lot of great options here. Well, I really wish I could take that Torrential Gearhulk, but unfortunately, Duress does not allow you to do that. I think a lot of it will depend on Kelvin Chu's hand. I think Negate is probably what he wants to take here, and as long as he's aware that Confiscation Coup is in Owen's hand, he can probably sculpt the game plan around playing against it.
And unfortunately for Kelvin Chu, that blue land is going to come into play tapped, of course, and look at his hand, it is just full of blue cards. So Supreme Will and Essence Scatter might do some work next turn.
Yeah, and Owen Turtenwald on Torrential Gearhulk, but not only does he need to find a land, he needs to find a blue source to actually cast it. And there's not actually a good spell for him to cast So he has to actually wait until he finds a card draw effect.
Both of these players had kind of weird openers here in terms of mana, in terms of the way that the game's gone out here. A bit of a discussion going on in the feature match area. We'll see if we can get across what's going on down there.
Yeah, and it looks like Owen Turtenwald drew Supreme Will for the turn and opting to... Oh no, never mind. A second copy of Confiscation Coup.
So both players in the
draw.
Oh,
and there's a blue source.
Okay, Ether Hub's going to change things here for Turtenwald.
There's a blue source, but I don't know if Owen would feel comfortable just playing a naked Torrential Gearhulk with nothing to get back.
Disallow the draw for Kelvin Chu.
Kelvin now has access to that blue mana, so he can be representing an Essence Scatter here.
Essence Scatter in addition to Supreme Will in the hand of Chu.
Yeah. Wow. Somehow Kelvin Chu is still at 20 life despite being stuck on only black mana. I mean, the thing is, he had the removal effects and he had the duresses, and he hit every single time. Wow, and Owen Turtenwald choosing to be aggressive here.
Just going for it.
Just playing a Torrential Gearhulk.
Going for it.
I think the thing is, as the game continues to progress, he knows Kelvin Chu has a handful of cards, so he has to put pressure here and hope that just Kelvin Chu is unable to find that second blue source.
So it's going to be Supreme Will, and I like that, making sure the card's going to be relevant because, of course, it has a mana leak mode, as with making your opponent pay 3 more mana for your spells. Doesn't always have an impact later as the game goes long.
Oh, and that was an excellent threat for Owen to find. Can he find another follow-up threat here?
Tune with Ether. One of the most innocuous cards in the team of deck, but also one of the most important ones, Paul.
Oh yeah, I think it might. Maybe outside of Harness Lightning, it might be one of the it's like the second best energy card in the format. If you think about it, right? It's a 1-mana spell that gets you a land, but look at the conversion rates with what you can do with energy, right? Harness Lightning. Every point of energy is a point of damage. Long Tusk Cub, 2 points of energy is +1/+1 counter. It just does so much work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you look at it, you play a tune with Ether, and you gain a land card and 2/3 of a Thopter,
yeah,
or 2/3 of a counter on the Bristling Hydra. Like this, it does so much work.
Yeah, Imagine just a card that said 1 mana, make a Thopter, and get a land.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Pretty busted. On the floor, we've got Tim Willoughby standing by with an update. What have you got for us, Tim?
Well, I've been watching the match between William Huey Jensen and Jerry Thompson. The way that we normally expect control versus energy to go is that the control deck has a great game one, energy better after sideboarding. Not quite gone that way thus far. Huey winning the first game fairly straightforwardly, getting a Long Tusk Cub in, pumping it up quite a bit and just sneaking that win. Game 2, though, that was the really interesting one. Jerry Thompson using a Field of Ruin very early on a Botanical Sanctum, that leaving William Jensen without the coloured mana that he needed early doors, and that meaning that, surprisingly, somehow or other, Jerry able to get down a Scarab God while Huey's still very short on mana. We're at 1-1 there, going to a Game 3.
Thanks, Tim. Back now to game number 2 of our main match here. Kelvin Chu up, of course, 1-0 against Owen Turtenwald. And Paul, he's finally found that second blue source, but of course it comes into play tapped.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you actually look at Kelvin Chu's mana base, he is playing 8 Swamps in his deck. So he has skewed very heavily to play a lot of black mana in his deck. And I think that's because he has 3 copies of Gifted Aetherborn in his sideboard, and he wants to be able to play that turn 2 against Ramunap Red. And because of that concession, you know, sometimes things like this will happen.
Sometimes it looks like you're
and besides, search for Azcanta. That's an island, right?
Oh, yeah, basically. Sure. Yeah, 100%. There we go. So another Essence Scatter. I really like the way that Chu has kept himself ahead here, despite the mana issues he's having. Owen Turtenwald has drawn out of his, and he's able to leverage some pretty sweet turns here. But double Confiscation Coup is going to be very interesting as this game continues. Yeah,
we need to take a look at Kelvin Chu's hand. He actually needs to find a way to deal with these Rogue Refiners. This is lethal. Kelvin Chu is currently at 5 life, and he has to deal with both of these Rogue Refiners. Now, he has a Torrential Gearhulk, but the problem is Owen Turtenwald's got 2 copies of Confiscation Coup in his hand. So he can just steal this Torrential Gearhulk. So I think, you know, Kelvin needs to actually draw out of this a little bit. Kind of being stuck on 1 blue mana is really cost him here.
It really has. I mean, his hand has just done nothing. Like the cards like Disallow in his hand, Torrential Gearhulk, these cards that are supposed to be impactful in the early game, in the late, they just haven't done what he's needed them to do here. As we see a Vraska's Contempt being flashback, that's going to give him a little bit of breathing room now to gain some life.
Yeah, but Owen Turtenwald's going to untap, take the Torrential Gearhulk and get in for 3, putting Kelvin Chu down to 4 with, again, 2 threats.
And this would all change if Chu had access to more blue mana, because he could be representing the gate, he could be representing any number of counter spells to tussle with that. But right now, he's got no other choice. He's just got to ship the Torrential Gearhulk across.
Yeah, and he's got another Confiscation Coup in hand. So this is going to be tough. This is going to be tough. Kelvin Chu does have the option of playing a second Torrential Gearhulk here, taking a look at his hand, and use Vraska's Contempt to get his own Torrential Gearhulk off the board.
Always a beating when you have to do
That'll
that.
put him to 6. Owen Turtenwald will then steal this Torrential Gearhulk and put Kelvin Chu down to 3. So Kelvin then needs another follow-up. But he will get both Confiscation Coups off the board.
Yeah.
Then maybe he can actually untap, play the Scarab God, and actually return a Torrential Gearhulk for a little bit more value. So, you know, Owen does have a couple of cards he can still draw here. But if he doesn't, I think Kelvin Chu might be able to stabilize.
Kelvin Chu poised on a knife edge here. And as you say, if he strays just but a little, he will fall.
Yeah.
Gonna have to work very hard here to keep himself in it. And we may just see exactly the same play that we saw before. We may see the Torrential Gearhulk flashing back the Vraska's Contempt, buffering the life total, keeping the pressure off, and then Turtenwald with, of course, the perfect answer in hand.
Oh, and Kelvin Chu opting to... I know this is a little more risky because Owen Turtenwald might have a counter magic, but Kelvin Chu wants to ambush here and play it at instant speed because he's so far behind. Now, if this actually works, this is huge.
Yeah, the difference here is that he will be able to block.
Right. He will get the Torrential Gearhulk off the board, go to 6, block the Rogue Refiner, and now Owen Turtenwald can use the Confiscation Coup to take the Torrential Gearhulk, but Kelvin Chu can actually take 2 attacks from the Torrential Gearhulk, and he has a Scarab God in hand, and Owen, I believe, only has 2 copies of Confiscation Coup in his entire 75, and he will have used both if he steals this Gearhulk.
I mean, these are still huge plays from Owen Turtenwald. Confiscation Coup on Torrential Gearhulk. I mean, this is massive stuff from him. It's so impressive how Kelvin Chu is keeping himself in this game here.
Absolutely.
Confiscation Coup from Turtenwald, just like we drew it up. So we have gone one more again here. A bit of a curtain call for this play here.
But Owen only has lands in hand. If Kelvin Chu finds a land here, he can play the Scarab God and return a creature. Oh, but he doesn't have that extra land, actually.
No, he doesn't. Instead, he's
So
drawn a Glimmer of Genius.
So now he has a choice. The thing is, if he plays a Scarab God, all he can do, he can actually play the Scarab God and take a hit from the Gearhulk, go to 1. Owen Turtenwald doesn't have a whole lot of actual direct damage burn in his deck. The only way he can actually deal direct damage is with Chandra Torch of Defiance.
Yeah, yeah. Or a Glorybringer off the top is another way to get in with some hasty damage, but then you're opening yourself up to stuff like Essence Scatter.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards Owen Turtenwald can draw here. I think if Kelvin manages to survive this turn, though, and untap, I think he will be firmly in the driver's seat.
So, Glimmer of Genius
Here we go. Is it the Scarab God time?
It's Scarab God time. That was risky stuff from Kelvin Chu.
He needs to draw something nice here.
He needed an untapped land in the top 4 cards of his library.
That's not going to get
it
done.
there.
Kelvin's going to 1. Kelvin's going to 1.
This is so tight here. Follow-up play. Servant of the Conduit here.
Kelvin's got to be thrilled that he gets to untap
Back to Kelvin. What's he going to find? He goes through his graveyard, has a look. He's going to draw. Are we going to see?
He has the ability to actually get a creature on upkeep to scry. Now, there's a Torrential Gearhulk in the graveyard that he can return.
Nope.
He's opting to draw a card here instead.
And I think it was Vraska's Contempt.
Wow, was that the 3rd Vraska's Contempt?
I think it's the 3rd Vraska's Contempt that he's drawn. An
hey,
attack! An attack! Look at this!
Oh, no!
Come get some, he says.
And look at his hand. It is totally stacked. He's got an Essence Scatter and a Disallow here.
Just the all-out attack against 2 lethal attackers here in the face of Owen Turtenwald, one of the greatest players of the modern era. And Kelvin Chu, he doesn't care at all.
And look at Kelvin. He's just like, yeah,
whatever.
I'm just here playing Magic.
Playing my cards.
Yeah,
yeah.
What do you got? You got something?
Yeah, that's it. Get some food later? What's going on? Good steak place down the road.
You think you're a master?
Oh, no.
They literally call me the master.
That's it, mate. Yeah, come on. I'm Kelvin Chu.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I just love the way he's playing. I mean, you know, the straight attack. Owen Turtenwald, just another day in the office for the O-Rat. Oh, geez, got to slog through this one. He's chewing away like Gregory the Brontodon here.
This is just a really tough spot. And, yeah, Kelvin Chu is just firmly taking over this game.
It doesn't look like it. It just doesn't look like it,
yeah,
but...
See, when you're just tuning in here and you see Kelvin Chu at 1 life, 3 creatures versus 1, you might be thinking, oh man, yeah, Owen's got him on the ropes. It's like, no, Kelvin Chu is really good here.
He's going above and beyond. He's going to draw a card off the Rogue Refiner, and this value machine is finally kicking into gear. Let's just get another one.
He could also get a Torrential Gearhulk here if he wants, but I think he might want to be able to get the Torrential Gearhulk and play at instant speed.
Yeah. And this
he
is
didn't even look at his card. He's just like,
no, he's just like, whatever, I'll take it. I don't care.
It's not going to matter.
So
did he actually look at the card? I can't even.
I don't know. I really don't know.
What if he found a Fatal Push? He could have.
All right. So now the Scarab God Trigger goes onto the stack, and we're going to see Chu at least scry 2. And look, yeah, it looks like he's happy to do it. Double Glimmer of Genius on the
He's
top.
just like, I don't even need the cards here. I have my card draw engine, I have my card advantage engine in Scarab God, and I already have a Glimmer of Genius in hand. All I want to do is load my hand up with just hard counters.
Kelvin Chu didn't play a blue source until turn 6, I think.
His first 4 lands were
just
swaps.
And the rub-ins for Owen Turtenwald, of course, who was a master of Mono Black Devotion.
And you recognize the and now search for
Search for
Ascanta,
Ascanta.
another card advantage engine.
Better late than never, he says.
Wow. Owen just needs to find a Chandra here, but it looks like he found another land.
But even if he finds Chandra, there's just so much that Chu can do to forestall any kind of nonsense from Owen Turtenwald.
Right. What Owen, and the thing is, yeah, Kelvin Chu has access to an instant speed torrential Gearhulk, which he could use to rebuy a counterspell that he has in his yard.
Yeah, that's the thing, and for the cost of just 4 mana. I mean, you know, it reminds you of this sort of Snapcaster Mage type play. It's so cheap.
And keep in mind, those Rogue Refiners have also given him energy. Now he's got this Bristling Hydra as well. That's a win condition.
Sorry,
he's
Paul.
got 2 Bristling Hydras.
Bristling Hydras. He's got 2 Bristling Hydras. He's got 500,000 billion squillion
Who's the
energy.
energy deck?
Who's the energy? This is blue-black energy.
Yeah,
Broken the format.
This is 4 scries, and that's 4 damage.
He doesn't even have to attack here. This is the other thing that the Scarab got. He doesn't have to contest the battlefield. Slowly but surely, Kelvin Chu is
and that's a disallow.
Further and further ahead. Double disallow in hand. He's got all the card draw in the world. He's got Surge for Ascanta. He is firing on all cylinders. This is the biggest hit since the Beatles from Kelvin Chu.
Did he flip the Surge for Ascanta? Did he get the trigger off of that? I don't even know.
Just draw it. Just
I mean, it probably doesn't matter. I'm just wondering if
this is
something
incredible stuff from the Singaporean. He has absolutely hit his straps. It is a masterclass in the way that blue-black control goes down swinging. He's still got Turtenwald's graveyard in his hand while he's mucking around as the torrential Gearhulk comes down. Turtenwald just has to take his lumps here. Fatal push.
Right, and you know, when we were looking at some of the reasons to play 4-color energy, this is exactly the reason why.
And a huge attack from Kelvin Chu and a handshake from Owen Turtenwald, and Kelvin Chu is propelled even further towards our top 4, Paul Cheon. Incredible stuff from him, and unfortunately Owen Turtenwald, unbelievable. He can't believe it.
Yeah.
You can't believe it, I can't believe it. Imagine around the world you can't believe it either, ladies and gentlemen. We're moving across now to check in with Seth Manfield and Shota Yasuoka. Once again, we're going to see the intricacies of this matchup, ladies and gentlemen. It's our great pleasure to bring it to you live from Boston, Massachusetts. Riley Knight alongside Paul Cheon in the booth, and on your screen, once again, huge names of Magic, and it's really important, Paul Cheon, for those watching around the world to get their head around this matchup. If you want to succeed in Standard today, you need to know this inside and out.
Absolutely, and here you see Shota won game 1. Not a big surprise. But after sideboard, Seth Manfield looks to be in a pretty good position here. He has resolved Chandra Torch of Defiance. I see a Rogue Refiner on Shota Yasuoka's side, so I imagine he probably cast a Gonti, followed up by a Rogue Refiner off the Gonti. But it looks like Seth is pretty firmly ahead here, given that Chandra is on the battlefield.
Yeah, Shota Yasuoka is, his graveyard seems to have played a bit of a disappearing act here, and you can see Seth Manfield with that characteristically casual permanent placement. They're all sort of skewed off at a 45-degree angle here.
Where's his graveyard? Where's the exile? Who knows?
Seth Manfield seems to have just got through a struggle to survive here. This is an interesting piece of technology. I know Brett Nelson was also playing it here. It's essentially a black Doomblade, or a black Doomblade is just actual Doomblade. A red Doomblade here struggle. I mean, huge card in limited and make a bit of a splash in Standard.
Right, it's a solid removal effect and just another hedge against graveyard effects. I think a deck that I believe when I was talking to Seth and Brad, they were saying, you know, there's a deck that I was a little bit concerned about and nobody's playing it, was the God Pharaoh's Gift deck. So just having an extra card that allows you to remove somebody's graveyard is just kind of a safeguard.
Yeah, sure, and we see this.
And he still brought it in. He brought it in for this matchup.
It's got a lot of utility for sure, and it seems like, you know, the Teamer deck isn't the only one that's doing this. We see Scavenger Grounds in the Ramunap Red decks, of course, as a way to contest with graveyards. God Pharaoh's Gift hasn't been on the radar this weekend. However, an important thing to note here, this tournament is a little insular. You know, it's a little sort of inward-facing, and it's not necessarily representative of the metagame as a whole, Paul.
Right, we haven't seen any black-green Constrictor deck, for example. There's just a lot of decks. For example, there are no white cards in this tournament, and you know, white cards are played in Magic. It's just these players, they test in groups of 3 or 4. So if a few people just come to similar conclusions, you're just only going to have 3 or 4 decks in the entire tournament, and that's kind of what ended up happening here.
Let's not forget as well, the purse for the first place this tournament is a cool $100,000. It is six-figure prize purse for whoever takes it out here. And I mean, talking to the players as we have today, I think there's a little hesitancy amongst a lot of them to take risks here. You know, often you can gain an edge by turning up a huge tournament with a bit of a brewski. But I think these guys, they've wanted to leverage the power of known quantities. They've wanted decks with proven track records, and they've wanted they needed that confidence, Paul, coming into this tournament, knowing the cards that they were playing with were going to perform.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, whenever a format is new, is understanding the limited format. So I know a lot of these players tested a lot just to make sure they get that down, and kind of, I think a lot of people's game plan was just to kind of play a safer deck.
Yeah.
I was actually, I heard that Martin Yuza, their team actually had a very solid deck that he felt would have been a pretty good choice in this metagame, but couldn't pull the trigger because the deck was a little bit too new. But instead, I mean, you know, all the other members of his team playing Blue-Black Control, doing quite well.
What's going to be really interesting, of course, in the coming months, we've got Pro Tour Ixalan coming up, and it'll be really interesting to revisit this format again with the best players in the world and see what changes have made, see what new technology's been brought to bear and how the format evolves. And of course, everyone around the world watching wherever they are, they can have a hand in the development of this format because we've seen what the threats are, we've seen what the decks that you need to contend with are, and now is the time to go and crack some skulls, get some stuff going with decks that are going to make an impact.
Yeah. And Seth Banfield, currently slightly favored, but Yasuoka does have a lot of cards in the grip. He's got an Abrade, he's got a Supreme Will, and a Search for Azcanta, but currently no answer for that Chandra. Seth Banfield down to 1 card. What is he working with here?
This is tricky stuff for Yasuoka because, of course, a Resolved Planeswalker, very, very difficult to contend with profitably. Yasuoka does have, you know, many ways to interact with what Manfield's attempting to do here, but I don't see many ways for him to contend with Chandra.
Yeah, there's a couple of cards. He does have Vraska's Contempt. There is Hour of Devastation, which would be pretty nice on this board if it resolves. So Seth Manfield has to decide, you know, he's holding a negate in hand. He's like, do I want to let this Glimmer resolve, or do I want to use the negate on something that would actually deal with the Chandra that's on the board?
Negate disallow under consideration for Shota Yasuoka here, the Japanese Hall of Famer. I mean, no jaws dropping around the room when it was unveiled that he was playing Grixis Control.
Yeah, so he currently has no lands in hand. He might be interested in one of the counter spells, maybe the Negate, in the hopes that he draws a Vraska's Contempt, so he can play a Vraska's Contempt with Negate backup to fight the counter spell that Seth has.
He just did it. He
What
just
happened?
did exactly what you said. He's just drawn the Negate off the top, and then the Vraska's Contempt. Fresh, blind draw off the library.
Nice.
A stone cold master, ladies and gentlemen. You can see it there hiding out the back of his hand, so he is going to be able to do... Oh, no, it's a braid. Excuse me, it's an Abrade.
Well, that still pressures the Chandra.
Yeah.
And now Chandra's down to 2. If he has a removal effect for the Rogue Refiner, he can actually attack the Chandra down on the following turn.
Spybluff Canal also joining the hand of Shota Yasuoka, as well as what looks like a mountain there. He's chosen very, very powerful options for his basic lands today.
Yeah, but I still do like the fact that he kept the Negate because, you know, that pause when Shota Yasuoka end of turn played Glimmer of Genius could have been a sign. He might have sniffed out a Negate. He might be like, you know, Seth Manfield might be holding a Negate, so I think I'm going to need this Negate to fight his Negate, and which is why he opted to keep it in case he found a card like Vraska's Contempt.
Manfield is on exactly that. We're going to see Long Tusk Cub join the fray thanks to the Torch of Defiance. A Forest, the fresh draw for Manfield, which is a bit of an awkward one. He's looking for more gasoline here.
Yeah. And I think at this point, Seth might actually keep the creatures back because I think his primary win condition here is to just keep getting ahead with that Chandra Torch of Defiance. And by keeping both of the creatures back, Shota Yasuoka needs to find 2 removal spells to actually attack through the Chandra.
Impulse mode activated on this copy of Supreme Will. Shota Yasuoka can have a look at the top 4 and snag whichever one he likes. Saw a Gonti up in the mix there, in addition to 3 other options. Was that a Vraska's Contempt?
I'm not exactly sure.
I'm seeing them everywhere. I'm seeing them everywhere.
You want to see it.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's an Azcanta trigger. In effective scry, you can look at the top card of your library and choose whether or not to put it into your hand or into your graveyard.
Luis Scott Vargas yesterday made the point that it is actually slightly better than scrying because generally you want the card in your graveyard rather than underneath your library.
Absolutely, because you're playing a Torrential Gearhulk deck, you want those spells to hit your graveyard. And of course, Search for Azcanta flips under the condition of you having 7 cards in your graveyard.
So slightly upgraded twist on the Evergreen scry mechanic there. Bit counterintuitive for new players. I remember the first time I saw Alexander Hayne target himself with the Thought Scour. I had no idea why he'd do that. You know, why didn't he mill over his opponent's good cards?
What's going on here?
But that is the way that it gets set up. Of course, as you mentioned, Torrential Gearhulk, one of the biggest payoffs for stacking your own yard there.
So Shota Yosaoka actually opted to keep off the Surge for Kenta trigger. What he could have actually even considered was on upkeep, cast Fatal Push on the Long Tusk Cub, then put a card in your graveyard, which would have put 7 cards into Shota Yasoka's graveyard for Surge for Kenta, and to get that to flip.
Chandra goes upstairs once again.
To wait a turn.
Oh, and here we go.
That's a Deathgorge Scavenger.
Very, very good against the Scarab God, as we saw in a previous round, Paul.
Right.
Kill the Scarab God, then exile it before it returns to the hand, and we're going to see a card exiled from Shota Yasuoka's graveyard by the
yeah, and this is getting kind of rough. Like Shota Yasuoka, now that's putting him further and further away from actually hitting 7 cards in his graveyard. He might have actually wanted to cast that Fatal Push on upkeep on the previous turn to ensure that the Surge for Kenta flips.
So look at that. Talk about a poker face. Shota Yasuoka known for his composure while he's playing, and also the speed at which he plays, Paul.
Yes.
Lightning fast from him generally. He makes his decisions just like that. Very difficult to get a read on this player. Seth Manfield, a little more expressive, you would say, massaging the temples.
Yeah, so now that Seth has 3 creatures on the battlefield, I think he is considering making an attack here with the Rogue Refiner. But he is still aware of the fact that his primary game plan here is Chandra Torch of Defiance. Draw cards, and lots of them.
Another Supreme Will now for a couple more cards off the top for Shota Yasuoka. He's digging hard. He's jumped in the Bobcat and he's digging away, trying to find the answers that he needs here.
Yeah, let's take a look. Let's see what did he find here.
All right, we're going to see a Fatal Push get rid of this
Long
Long Tusk
Fatal
Cub.
Push.
Manfield not looking to contest that, of course.
And this time he wants to flip the Surge for Kenta. There's 6 cards in the graveyard here. Now he gets a look. If he puts a card in his yard, that's 7. Now he gets the flip.
Straight in there.
And that's a card advantage engine. Shota Yasuoka has virtually his own Planeswalker. It's basically like a 2-mana Planeswalker in the sense that it does get you ahead on cards every single turn as long as it's on the battlefield.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit more mana intensive, of course, to activate, but no less impactful.
But much more difficult to get rid of.
That's also very true. You can't attack it.
Yeah.
I'll send this at you, send this to the Sunken Ruin. It doesn't quite work.
And, you know, that's the thing. Josh Hader Layton's team, they recognized how powerful this card was, and they realized they need to find answers. They need to have answers for this card. They are playing 3 copies of Field of Ruin in their main deck to deal with the flip lands.
So Yasuoka, double Gearhulk and a negate in hand. So his hand is just very, very stacked, ready to go toe-to-toe with what Manfield is going to bring to bear. But, of course, the Torch of Defiance, a continual thorn in the side of Yasuoka here. And negate off the top is going to mean 2 damage upstairs.
That is what we call a Nambo.
Yeah.
Counter magic with Chandra Torch of Defiance. Not the best here. And now Shota Yasuoka working with double Torrential Gearhulk in hand. Seth Manfield's holding a negate. That's not going to do anything against just a giant 5/6 body that Shota is likely going to flash in here.
And Yasuoka can also defend it, right? He's got a negate of his own. You know, he can defend it from an opposing removal spell, or even defend the card that he wants to flash back if he's wanting to flash back a Supreme Will or some such.
Right, and Shota also has access to negate in hand as well, because as he took it earlier with the Glimmer of Genius. So now what he can opt to do is play the Torrential Gearhulk, target one of his removal effects. I think there's an Abrade in his graveyard. He might use the Abrade to get the Deathgorge Scavenger off the board, and then block the Rogue Refiner, and that's, you know, I think this is him turning the corner right now.
Yeah. So here is the Abrade cast from the Torrential Gearhulk, and again, as we said, he's got a negate to defend that Abrade if he so chooses here.
And I don't even think he would negate, even if Seth negates this. I think Shota's still going to hold on to that negate, because the way he loses here is if Seth Manfield resolves another Planeswalker.
He's got bigger plans for it, huh?
Oh yeah.
So a nice little tidy 2-for-1 here for Shota Yasuoka on the back of his Torrential Gearhulk.
Oh man, Seth Manfield is in a lot of trouble here. But that is a Long Tusk Cub. That's a Long Tusk Cub with 12 energy, so it's potentially a 7/7.
Just as simple as that. 2-mana 7/7. Tamago, feed your heart out here.
Right, but Shota Yasuoka holding another Torrential Gearhulk in hand, and he drew Harness Lightning. He's got a lot of energy.
All right, well, he's going to be able to contend against this Chandra here. No worries. And this is better stuff from Shota Yasuoka. He's certainly managed to turn the corner here in a major way, going up against this Planeswalker. Negate in order to defend both the Planeswalker and the Long Tusk Cub. But this is where Yasuoka wants to pick his battle.
Seth Manfield will be on an empty board here. Shota Yasuoka is going to resolve this Harness Lightning. Long Tusk Cup will get off the board. Now Shota's going to attack the Chandra and even attack with the Rogue Refiner, putting Seth down to 17.
Just like that, and Yasuoka begins to pull further and further ahead with the Torch of Defiance off the field. Yasuoka with a Torrential Gearhulk in hand.
Wow. Here we go, and Seth Manfield passes, and now we get to see Ascan to the side and do some even more work.
Chuck it into top
Here
gear,
we go.
snag
Negate
yourself
or
another
fatal
card.
push.
It's going to be a negate off the top, and Seth Manfield, oh, he's going to be an unhappy chappy to see that, of course. Yasuoka is pulling further and further ahead. He's going to clock in for 8 now.
Yasuoka smells blood.
Absolutely, blood in the water. Those sharky nostrils picking up the heartbeat of a distant foe. And now an extension of the hand. Seth Manfield stuck at X and 6 now as Yasuoka, the stone cold Japanese master, continues his onslaught here as he's hunting, of course, for that top 4 finish. But plenty more action still to come here from Boston. It's been a great pleasure as we welcome you back to the booth to bring you the latest and greatest in standard action from Massachusetts. But right now, we've got to go to a break. Stick around, everyone, because on the other side of this, there'll be more stuff coming your way live from Boston, the World Championship of Magic the Gathering.